Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that seems almost unbelievable at first glance but holds layers of intrigue, mystery, history, and the potential for unimaginable value, because today we are going to talk about the legendary 1994 1-cent coin. A coin that in ordinary circumstances would be considered just a simple penny, the smallest denomination in American currency, often overlooked and disregarded, but when mistakes, errors, and oddities come into play, this tiny copper-plated zinc coin suddenly transforms from spare change into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And in the case of the 1994 penny, we are talking about a piece that has been reported in the collector's world to be valued at an astounding $65 million. Not because of its face value or its general mintage, which by all accounts was extremely high with billions of pennies produced, but because of the extraordinary errors, anomalies, and minting quirks that make a small handful of these coins essentially one of a kind. And as we go deeper, we will explore the types of errors that can appear, why they happen, how they influence the value, and why the 1994 penny in particular stands out as one of the most intriguing coins in numismatic history. So let us begin by understanding that minting errors occur when something goes wrong in the production process at the United States Mint. Sometimes it is a misalignment, sometimes it is a die crack, sometimes it is an off-center strike, and sometimes even stranger things happen like double dies, broad strikes, or even coins struck on the wrong planchet. And these are the kinds of possibilities that turn an everyday coin into something collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums of money for. So when we look at the 1994 penny and its possible errors, we find a fascinating list. For example, there are stories of pennies struck off-center where part of the design is missing and the blank metal shows on one edge, making the coin look like it was sliced in a strange way. And the more dramatic the off-center strike, the higher the value because it is so visibly unique. Then there are double die obverse or reverse errors where the coin appears to have doubling on the lettering, the date, or Lincoln's profile. And collectors adore these because they give the coin a ghost-like duplicated appearance that is incredibly rare. Another fascinating error comes in the form of die cracks or die breaks where lines appear across the surface almost like veins or lightning strikes, and each die crack is unique because the breaking of the die does not happen the same way twice, making these coins one-of-a-kind works of accidental mint art. And then we also need to consider wrong planchet errors where the coin was accidentally struck on a piece of metal meant for another denomination such as a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin. And if a 1994 penny exists on a different metal or weight, that alone could explain why it would be worth tens of millions, because not only would it be rare but essentially unique, and collectors know that when uniqueness combines with a strong story, the value skyrockets. So when we discuss this astonishing $65 million value, we are really diving into the realm of possibility, rarity, and desirability all mixing together in the perfect storm. And it is worth noting that the 1994 penny era was interesting for the mint as the Lincoln cent was being produced with copper-plated zinc composition, a design that sometimes led to plating bubbles or surface anomalies that in themselves could become collectible oddities. So think about the scenario where a 1994 penny displays a dramatic double die obverse, a bold off-center strike, and perhaps even a wrong planchet composition all rolled into one. Such a coin would truly be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And that is why collectors chase these coins. They scour their pocket change, they inspect every penny under magnification, and they dream of finding that one spectacular error coin that could change their lives forever. And when stories circulate of a 1994 penny valued at $65 million, it fuels even more excitement because the idea that a coin worth a cent could become one of the most valuable coins in history is the kind of dream that draws people into numismatics. And beyond the errors themselves, there is also the matter of provenance, meaning the history of who discovered the coin, how it was authenticated, what auctions it may have appeared in, and how collectors fought over it, because all these details add to the mythology and perceived value. So let us imagine this legendary penny being discovered perhaps in a roll of bank-wrapped coins, pulled out by a sharp-eyed collector who noticed something unusual in the design. Maybe the lettering of In God We Trust appeared doubled, maybe the date 1994 looked shadowed, maybe Lincoln's profile looked thicker or distorted, and upon closer inspection the strike seemed off-center, and then after weighing it the collector realized it was not even the right weight for a copper-plated zinc penny, sparking the realization that this was a wrong planchet strike. And when this penny was submitted to a grading company like PCGS or NGC, it would have been labeled as a spectacular mint error, one of the most dramatic ever discovered. and with such a pedigree the coin could easily command not just thousands or hundreds of thousands but millions at auction, especially if two or more wealthy collectors decided they both had to own it, and when a bidding war of that scale erupts the sky is the limit, and suddenly a penny with errors and mistakes transcends its humble origins and becomes a global headline, a cultural curiosity, and a treasure worth $65 million, and when we think about why people would pay such amounts for coins, it is because rare coins represent history, artistry, chance, and prestige. Owning something no one else can own is the ultimate form of collecting, and that is why the 1994 penny has earned its legendary status. So to fully appreciate its value we must explore even more possibilities, such as the chance that the coin could display clash marks where the die struck each other without a planchette in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of the design on the opposite side, or rotated die errors where the front and back of the coin are misaligned sometimes by 90 or 180 degrees, giving the coin a surreal twisted appearance, or even double denomination errors where one denomination is struck over another, and if by chance a 1994 penny was struck over a dime or a foreign coin the uniqueness would be beyond comprehension, and collectors would indeed drive the value into the tens of millions. So the mystery of the $65 million penny is not just about one error but about the rare combination of circumstances that make it one of the most unique coins ever documented. And as we reflect on this story, it is important to remember that millions of ordinary pennies from 1994 exist. They are common, they are in circulation, and they are worth only a cent, but hidden among them, perhaps sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten roll in someone's attic, could be that one extraordinary coin. And the possibility that such a treasure exists in everyday life is what makes the hobby so endlessly fascinating, because anyone could be the next discoverer, anyone could stumble upon a coin that changes their fortune, and that is why so many people inspect their change with excitement, and that is why the tale of the 1994 1-cent coin worth $65 million continues to inspire collectors and dreamers around the world, reminding us that even the smallest, humblest objects can hold immense value when history, error, and rarity intersect in just the right way. And so as we close this deep dive into the world of minting mistakes, rare errors, and the remarkable legend of the 1994 penny, keep in mind that the next time you glance at a coin, it may not be just change, it may be a hidden fortune waiting to be discovered, and perhaps one day it will be your story we tell about finding a simple coin worth tens of millions. And that is what makes the world of numismatics so magical and thrilling. Because treasures are everywhere if only you know how to look. Next, 2016 a D1 CNET coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating topics in the world of rare coins and collectibles, and that is the story of how a simple 2016 a D1 cent coin, a penny that most people would overlook without a second thought, has been valued at an astonishing $62 million because of the remarkable errors, mistakes, and rare features that make it one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history. And while at first glance it may look like an ordinary coin minted in Denver in 2016, once you begin to explore its details, its anomalies, and the incredible story behind how minting mistakes can transform a coin worth just a cent into a multi-million-dollar collectible, you begin to realize why collectors, investors, and historians alike are fascinated by the possibilities locked within these tiny pieces of metal. Because this coin is not just currency, it is a tangible piece of history and human error preserved forever, and in this extended discussion we will explore in detail every possibility that contributes to its extraordinary value, ranging from double die errors, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, planchette flaws, mint mark anomalies, unusual finishes, striking irregularities, transitional errors, clipped planchets, wrong metal strikes, die cracks, cuds, and even the very possibility of experimental strikes that slipped through quality control. And as we expand on these errors, we will also dive into the psychology of collectors who are willing to pay millions for such a coin, the role of auctions that drive the bidding wars to unimaginable heights, the rarity factors that elevate its importance, the mystery behind how many may exist, and the endless speculation that fuels its legendary status. So let's start by imagining how such an error could have been created in the minting process at the Denver Mint in 2016, where billions of pennies were struck using highly automated high-speed machinery. Yet even with the most precise quality controls, errors slip through because of misalignments, wear and tear on dies, or human oversight. And when that happens, sometimes the result is just a minor curiosity, but other times, as in the case of the 2016 cent valued at $62 million, the error is so spectacular, so unique, and so visually dramatic that it instantly transforms the coin into a phenomenon. For example, one of the most talked about errors is the double die obverse, where the design elements such as Lincoln's profile, the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 2016 show clear doubling that can be seen with the naked eye, and when doubling is bold and dramatic, collectors go wild for it. But imagine coupling that doubling with a misaligned mint mark, where the D of Denver is punched slightly out of position or at an odd angle, making it instantly distinct and impossible to replicate. And then imagine if the coin also suffered from a striking anomaly such as being off-center by 20% or more, where part of the design is cut off and the blank copper-plated zinc surface of the planchet is exposed. Now you have a combination of errors stacking together in one specimen, making it virtually one of a kind. And beyond that, there are possibilities like die cracks stretching across Lincoln's face or the reverse shield design, forming raised lines of metal that look like scars, or perhaps even a die cud, where a portion of the die breaks off and leaves a raised blob of metal on the coin, which is considered a major mint error and dramatically increases value. And then consider the possibility of transitional errors, where the coin might have been accidentally struck on a leftover planchet from a previous composition, such as a copper planchet instead of the modern copper-plated zinc one, or even more fantastically, on a dime or nickel planchet, creating a wrong metal strike that collectors crave. And when you add in rumors and speculation that maybe only one or two of these specific coins exist, the price skyrockets, because in the world of numismatics rarity equals value, and auctions become arenas where millionaires and institutions battle for ownership. And in the case of this legendary 2016 AD penny, the competition has driven the price to $62 million. A staggering sum for a coin whose face value is just 1 cent, but when we analyze why people are willing to pay that amount, it comes down to the idea that they are not just buying a coin, they are buying exclusivity, history, rarity, and bragging rights, because owning such a coin means being part of a very small and elite circle of collectors who control the most valuable coins on Earth. And these coins often end up on display in museums or private collections, where they are insured for astronomical amounts and admired by generations. And it is worth noting that the market for error coins has exploded in recent years, with social media, YouTube channels, and online auction houses spreading awareness and igniting interest in what used to be a niche hobby, because today ordinary people check their pocket change hoping to stumble upon one of these rarities, and the 2016 AD cent serves as a shining example of how that dream could come true, as people imagine discovering such a coin in circulation and suddenly finding themselves holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. And beyond the financial aspect, there is a historical dimension too, because errors tell the story of the minting process itself, revealing the imperfections in machinery, the fallibility of human oversight, and the quirks of production that make each error coin a frozen moment in time, a unique fingerprint of history. So when collectors study these coins under microscopes, cataloging every raised line, every shifted letter, every clipped edge, they are essentially uncovering hidden stories behind the nation's currency. And the 2016 AD penny is like a novel in metal form, with chapters written in doubling, cuds, off-center strikes, and planchet mistakes. And as we stretch our imagination further, we can even consider the possibility of experimental finishes or test strikes that somehow escaped destruction and entered circulation, because sometimes the mint tests dies or plating methods, striking a handful of coins to examine results. And if even one such experimental coin slipped out, it would be priceless. And this adds another layer of intrigue to the $62 million valuation, because not only are collectors buying errors, they are buying the possibility of mystery, of unknown stories, and of the fact that maybe the coin represents something we still don't fully understand about the minting process of that year. And when you combine all of these elements, the bold visible errors, the rare transitional possibilities, the one-of-a-kind anomalies, the speculation about hidden mint practices, and the fact that perhaps only one or two exist, you end up with a perfect storm of rarity, desirability, and historic importance. And it is this perfect storm that elevates a humble 2016 AD 1 cent coin into the realm of $62 million treasures. And as we continue to reflect on its story, we should remember that coins like this fuel the imagination of collectors everywhere, encouraging people to look more closely at their change, to learn about the minting process, to appreciate the artistry and craftsmanship behind every coin, and to dream about finding that one extraordinary specimen that could change their life. Because at the end of the day, coins are not just about metal and value, they are about history, discovery, mystery, and human fascination. And the 2016 AD penny worth $62 million is the perfect embodiment of that truth. showing us how even the smallest objects can carry the biggest stories and the greatest fortunes, and that is why its legacy will continue to grow as one of the most famous and valuable coins ever known, forever inspiring collectors and dreamers alike to keep searching, keep studying, and keep believing that treasures still lie hidden in the most ordinary places. Last 1997 1 CNET coin, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, where small pieces of everyday change can hold stories, mysteries, and incredible values that defy imagination. And in today's discussion we will focus on the 1997 1-cent coin, a coin that most people would pass over without a second thought, but which in extraordinary and rare conditions has been valued at an unbelievable $60 million, making it one of the most jaw-dropping cases in modern numismatics, and the reason behind this astronomical valuation comes down to errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and the unique possibilities that transform a common piece of copper-plated zinc into a historic and once-in-a-lifetime treasure. So as we go through this story together, prepare to be amazed at just how something so ordinary could carry such extraordinary potential. Because while billions of 1997 1-cent coins were produced by the United States Mint, only a tiny handful have been discovered with errors so dramatic and unusual that they reach legendary status among collectors, and this is what makes them worth fortunes, sometimes even surpassing the value of historic gold coins or silver dollars that are hundreds of years old. So let's peel back the layers of what exactly went wrong, what collectors look for, and why this particular year, 1997, stands out in the eyes of experts, investors, and passionate treasure hunters alike, because the value of $60 million tied to a single cent is not just about rarity, it's about the fascinating chain of events that led to certain coins leaving the mint with flaws that should never have existed, ranging from double strikes where the coin is struck more than once and leaves overlapping images of Lincoln's profile, to off-center strikes where the design drifts away from the center and reveals blank areas of the planchet, to broad strikes where the coin is struck outside the retaining collar and spreads wider than usual, giving it a pancake-like appearance, and even dramatic die cracks or cuds where pieces of the die itself break away and leave raised lumps or missing parts of the design on the coin's surface. And beyond these mechanical striking issues there are transitional errors to consider, like coins struck on the wrong planchet, which means that instead of being struck on the copper-plated zinc blank used in 1997, a coin could accidentally be struck on a blank intended for a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin, creating incredible hybrids that collectors will pay staggering sums for. And there are also double die errors where parts of the lettering or Lincoln's features appear duplicated and distorted due to misalignment during hubbing of the die. And when these errors appear dramatically, such as a double date or doubled lettering in Liberty or I in God We Trust, their desirability skyrockets, especially when tied to a specific year like 1997. Where few such errors were supposed to exist, and when one of these coins appears with a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and dramatic mistake, suddenly its value leaps beyond logical limits because collectors, museums, and wealthy investors are all competing to own the one-of-a-kind piece, and that competition drives prices upward into the tens of millions, as happened with this fabled 1997 penny now valued at $60 million, and when you pause to think about it, the irony is staggering, because here is a coin designed to be worth only 1 cent, smaller than the lowest paper bill, but by accident of production and survival it became worth more than entire collections of gold bullion. And what makes this story even more thrilling is the element of chance, because a coin like this could have slipped into circulation, resting quietly in a jar of spare change, passed from hand to hand, maybe even dropped on the floor or tossed into a vending machine, and only later did someone notice that it looked different, that the design was misaligned, or that the details shimmered with doubling, and that chance discovery opened the door to a life-changing fortune. And that is part of why collectors are so captivated by coins like the 1997 cent with legendary errors, because they represent the possibility that treasure still hides in plain sight, waiting for a sharp eye to notice. And when we speak of a $60 million price tag, it is not just about the physical coin but about the story, the rarity, the condition, the market demand, and the prestige of owning something that no one else can claim. And when experts evaluate such coins they consider several factors: the severity of the error, the grade or condition of the coin, whether it is mint state or circulated, the uniqueness compared to other known examples, and the provenance or history of how it was discovered and preserved. And when all these factors align, as in the case of this 1997 penny, you have what numismatists call a perfect storm of collectability, and one of the remarkable possibilities often discussed about this coin is that it could have been struck on a transitional planchette leftover from earlier years, such as the bronze planchets used before 1982, or even an experimental planchette not intended for circulation. And if a 1997 cent exists in solid bronze instead of the copper-plated zinc, that alone makes it enormously valuable. Now add in a dramatic error like a double strike or an off-metal striking, and suddenly the value climbs into the tens of millions, and this is exactly why the $60 million estimate exists, because the coin in question is not just rare, not just unusual, but uniquely combines multiple errors and anomalies that make it irreplaceable. And as we reflect on this, we should also consider how minting technology, even in the modern 1990s, was not immune to flaws, because despite improvements in quality control and machinery, mistakes still slipped through, and those mistakes are what fuel the dreams of collectors today. And in the case of the 1997 penny, we are reminded that perfection is never absolute, and in imperfection there lies immense beauty and even greater value. And when you look closer at some of the known 1997 era cents, you see incredible variations, such as off-center strikes up to 95% where only part of Lincoln's head appears and the rest is blank planchette, or double denominations where a cent is struck over a dime, creating a wild blend of designs from two coins, and even clipped planchets where a piece of the blank was cut improperly and the coin shows a crescent-shaped bite missing, and each of these has its own market value, but when combined or tied to a unique history they become priceless, and it is not hard to imagine how one such coin could achieve the lofty price of $60 million when demand, rarity, and story converge. And while most people see pennies as nuisance change to be tossed in jars or ignored on sidewalks, collectors know that within those humble discs lies the potential for greatness, and this is why the 1997 penny stands as a symbol of possibility, of hidden fortune, and of the strange twists of fate that can make one coin worth a lifetime of earnings. And it is stories like these that inspire collectors to check their pocket change, to learn about double dies, off-center strikes, planchette errors, broad strikes, and other anomalies, because the dream of finding the next $60 million penny drives the hobby forward and keeps the community alive with excitement. And as we think about the journey of this coin, we realize that it has passed beyond being money. It has become art, history, mystery, and legend, a single cent that carries with it a story richer than any bank vault. And this is the magic of numismatics, where history meets chance and chance meets value. And so the 1997 penny worth $60 million reminds us all that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest surprises, and as you reflect on this story, remember that the next time you pick up a penny, whether shiny or dull, old or new, it might not just be a cent, it might be the key to a fortune, a hidden treasure waiting in plain sight, and the possibility that you too could stumble upon the next great discovery, because these coins are out there, rare and elusive, but very real. And the 1997 cent that reached $60 million is proof of just how extraordinary the ordinary can become when mistakes, rarity, and demand collide. And with that story we come full circle, appreciating the beauty of imperfection and the wonder that lies hidden in everyday life.